Hello, everyone. Anthony Crane with Pocket Coach, and I am going to show you today one of the experiments called mob time. So let me get my 5-minute timer start. As always, I will try to get the overview done in 5 minutes, and if you want to learn more, you're welcome to go past the 5 minutes. So let's get that 5 minutes started. Okay, so here on the left, I have a new screen that I've created to help talk about experiments. You can see here mob time, problem, hypothesis, time frame, typical outcomes, and skill criteria. So the problem that we're trying to solve with mob time, right? Whenever we run an experiment, what's the problem we're trying to solve? In this case, teams need a time they can dedicate to their product and to each other, ignoring all of the distractions. And that's hard to do when you're dedicated to a lot of different work, especially if these solutions are complex and take collective thinking. Agile transformation, rolling out safe, business agility, these things take portfolio management. These are all qualify, but so does most software development. The hypothesis here is that if we execute the mob time experiments, we will deliver more high quality value every single sprint if we do this mob time experiment. So that's the goal. That's what we think is going to happen. The time frame, 6 weeks, 3 sprints if you're doing 2-week sprints. So 3 sprints. And at the end of every sprint, ask, is the mob time helping us or not? So it takes 1 sprint to make a pivot or persevere decision. Typical outcomes. We expect you to see an increase in team velocity, an increase in your team's commitment ratio, what they say versus what they do. We call it the say-do ratio. We expect to see higher value delivery. And we also expect to see a team culture accelerate. Harder to measure, but it's no way that you don't notice it. So these are the typical outcomes. For skill growth, in other words, what do you have to do to execute this experiment? You have to have participated in a mob time and have used a mob time working agreement in that mob time. So if you do that, that's how you grow your skill levels in the app. Okay, so going over here on the right side, we have some details. So first off, mob time is a commitment to do mob work. It comes from pair programming. Some of you may have heard of it. If not, look it up. Pair programming was proven that if you have 1 computer and 2 people working on it, seems like you get half the productivity, but you get far more productivity because of quality checking, because of skill increases, because you have fewer defects that you didn't have to come back and figure out, which is a lot more expensive. So it's been pretty well proven that pair programming, especially because of skill growth, is very powerful accelerator. So pair programming moved into pair work. And so now not just programming, but any kind of work, drawing a legal brief, right? Doing a merger and acquisition, anything can be paired on. After that, pair programming evolved into something called mob programming. And if you Google mob programming, you'll see videos of people doing it and stuff. And from there, it moved into mob work. And honestly, Zoom, everyone working in Zoom is really a big mob work kind of thing because we have 1 person sharing their screen and a bunch of people chiming in. So it actually is a form of mob work. Now here I list out the 4 roles we use in our mob sessions. The driver, that's a person who's showing their screen, and often they're the least skilled person and they fumble around, but after a sprint or 2, they're geniuses at every tool. So it's a huge accelerator across the team. The navigator is a person who understands how to do it already, and they're kind of telling the driver what to do. There's also a mob, and the mob is shouting out stuff and sharing ideas. It's the navigator's job to synthesize that into something for the driver. So the navigator has to know how to do the job and has to know how to synthesize the information. And finally, we have a timekeeper because we like to time box everything we do during the mob, or else we just mob on the same thing and we don't get enough done. There's a different skill for the timekeeping. We'll talk about that in a separate video. So there are a lot more roles in this. So if you actually click, I have a link in here, you can see that there's a cute example here on the web. Check this out: navigator, driver, mobber, researcher, sponsor, rear admiral, the automationist, etc. So you can see all these roles here, and they even have levels that you have to skill up on level 1 before you can try these other harder level things. So you can take this hog wild. We on our teams, all we do is these 4 roles here. And by the way, we do it 1 person eventually. So at first this could be 4 different people, but as we get really good at it, we can be our own driver, our own navigator, and our own timekeeper. We can't be the mob, obviously, but we can do 3 of the 4 roles for 1 person as you skill up. We have here a candidate agenda. And so this is how we actually do it every day when we do our mob session. So have an agenda. After the 5 minutes, I'll go through the agenda in more detail. And then I think there was just one other thing. Yes, there's one other important overview thing to tell you. In order to do the mob time, we have to figure out how much time we have available. So this here is what we call a team commitment roster. Down the side, we list out all the people who are on the team and then what role they're in. And then here's the most important column in orange. What is their commitment in hours per week, right? So if they're only committed 5 hours a week or 40 hours a week, how much of that are we really getting? And how much of that will they spend in the mob? So this is a critical asset. I love setting this asset up for any team I join, is what is the team, who's on it, and what are their commits per week so we can hold ourselves accountable. At the end, no one gets in trouble. It's just, do we need to change how we plan because you're different than you thought, or can we move stuff from your plate so you can achieve what you originally committed to? And we ask that whenever when we're underperforming. The rest of this sheet I can talk about in the second 5 minutes. But there you have it. That's mob time. Figure out what your commits are per week. Put those commits into a plan of some kind, whether you're doing Scrum or Kanban, and embrace these new roles. And you should be good to go on mob time. All right, welcome to the second 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and reset this clock. In this 5 minutes, I'll just go a little bit deeper for those of you who want to see that. So let's go back to the agenda. If I can find it, there we go. Okay, so on the right here, and I'm going to leave on the left here, I'll leave this guy up. Okay, so you can kind of look at whichever you want. So on the right here, I have the agenda. So the agenda is split into 3 things: special days, regular agenda, and after the mob is over. Okay, so what we do is we, on our teams, if we're full-time 40 hours, we actually mob twice a day, a 90-minute one in the morning and a 90-minute one in the afternoon. So that's 3 hours a day that we're in mob, 5 hours a day where we're out of the mob. So that's my shoe. If you don't know what shoe is, Shu Hari, it's another video, you can watch that. That's my shoe for new teams. And so you don't have to follow my shoe, but if I was your coach, I would ask you to try it out before you reject it for 4 full-time teams. Now, if you're not a full-time team, then just, do the math. If I'm looking for 3 hours out of every 8, I'm looking for a little bit less than 50%. So if you are a 10-hour a week team, then maybe 4 hours a week would be mob time, 6 hours would be in individual time. But it also depends on the nature of the work. If your work is very collaborative, you might, if you only work 10 hours a week on this particular product, spend all 10 in mob, or 8 out of 10 in the mob, okay? It's also by individual. So over here on the left-hand side in the commit per week, one of the things we want to know is how much are you going to commit per week to the team in general? And then what is the blend? How much of that will be in mob and how much of that will be behind the scenes? Some people will say, I never do behind the scenes work. All the work I do is in the mob. So I'm just going to do 4 hours total, 4 hours mob. Others are going to say, man, I do very little in the mob other than update you guys on some things. So I'd maybe do an hour mob and 3 hours behind the scenes, right? Whatever. So whatever that ratio is, figure it out based on the role you're in. Okay, back to the agenda. So we have 3 parts: special days, regular agenda, after the mob. In the special days, up here, we put things that happen on a special day. On Mondays, the last Monday of every sprint, if we're doing Scrum, we want to prefer sprint review. So we just put it here so we don't forget. Wednesdays, mid-sprint, if it's the middle of the sprint, we review the impediments from the previous sprint and ask ourselves, hey, are we still victims of this? Have we been thinking about these enough? So it's been helping us accelerate. Every Thursday, we focus at least 15 minutes on relentless improvement, or what's called value delivery acceleration now. So I'm going to change that right now, value delivery acceleration, because that's what when we say relentless improvement of what, right? Relentless improvement of our ability to deliver value. There we go. Oops. Okay, live action improvement of these assets. Then we go into the regular, and finally we have an end of quarter. At the end of the quarter, there's always a lot of things we got to get done. So we have a special thing for the end of quarter. Then we have the regular agenda. So this is what we do every day. Start with good mornings, and we identify our driver, navigator, timekeeper, and mob. That takes us about 5 minutes because of the good mornings mostly. Again, as we get mature, it could be all one person except the mob. We then have a stand-up meeting, traditional 15-minute, but we use a very interesting labeling system. Watch our video on stand-up meetings, and we'll show you how we use labels to accelerate and make sure it's always 15 minutes long. It's really cool. It's a triage system. You might already be doing something similar. Next, we ask, is anyone leaving early? And we pivot to their stuff first. After that, we gather hot topics. Hot topics are things that are not on the plan work, but still are important. We need to talk about it. Then we ask, are any of those red hot? If they're red hot, then we address the red hot ones before the planned work, which means we're disrupting our plan, right? Our sprint plan is being disrupted, but sometimes it's worth it. But we go through this formality to make sure we thought about it. Then we triage new work. Has anything come in on our plates that we need to either put to the backlog or pull into the sprint? Do we need to pull something else out of the sprint? The whole discussion around new work coming in, we handle that off. Most of the time we don't have any, but when there is new work, we triage that right away. Finally, we get into planned work. And so we look at a couple of different labels. I mentioned the daily stand-up. You can see them here. Things that we need our product owner for, our product manager for, things that we want to swarm in order to advance them. Things that are blocked, we take a look at all those things in our mob session and how do we unblock these things. After that, we address any hot topics that are less important than planned work. And again, each thing has a time box. And finally, if we get through all that and we still have time left in our 90 minutes, then we actually pull items from our relentless improvement backlog. If you don't know what that means, watch our video on the first experiment for value delivery acceleration, and we'll explain what that all is. After the mob, we do planned work breakouts. And what that means is we have some things that are marked collab. And maybe it's just me and one other person or 2 other people. We'll just break off into a breakout room and work on that and just come back when we're done. And that way people can kind of just connect without having, what's great about this is you don't have to find a calendar time. We always know we're going to mob. So we can say, hey, in tomorrow's afternoon's mob, can we handle this? Rather than trying to find a time all the time. And that's what this really accelerates, is trying to schedule people. You don't have to. We have the cadence mob times, and so we're good to go. All right, we're almost out of our second 5 minutes. I didn't get to talk much about this asset, so if you want to learn about this final asset, which is another 5 minutes or maybe less, stick around and we'll do that now. So let me reset my timer. What's great is you get to decide pivot or persevere every single time, right? So persevere with me or pivot away. Now we're going to talk about the commitment roster. So here in the commitment roster, as I said already, we put our name and our role, and the most important column is what is our commitment in hours per week, and how much of that will be mob, how much of that will be behind the scenes. In addition, we have core and extended. Core are people who are the core members of our team, and we will work hard to always connect. The extended people are people who can't be there as much, so it's really about availability. And so we need to include them when we can, but we're never going to wait for them. And that's the thing the extended team members have to understand. If they show up, we don't go backwards. One big working agreement is if someone shows up late, we don't recover what we covered. They got to just try to figure it out, or afterwards in collab time, say, hey, can someone collab with me on one thing I didn't understand? And anybody who gets it can pair with that person. But we do not, in the middle of the mob, back up, because people keep coming in and out and you get nowhere. The core team, they make a commitment to be together more often. Agile level. So, we're agile coaches. So naturally we care about what your agile level is and how do we get you leveled up. Backup is huge. Who is your backup when you're not around? The person who will make decisions when you're not available. So where this is exciting is that we don't have to wait for you to get back, right? If you're out, so your backup's going to decide stuff. And the goal is, if they made 10 decisions, 8 of them were good and 2 of them were bad. And so we're net 6 ahead. And then we just have to undo a little bit of work for the 2 that they messed up. And they learn better how to represent you, and we all grow. So your backup is a person we can talk to if you're not there. And if your backup's not there, right, then they have to have a backup as well. Really, really love the backup because it really keeps our acceleration going. Location was much more interesting when we were co-located, and now everyone's like work from home. But location is what city, what country. Specialties and gaps. So specialties is stuff that you want to be used for. Like I like to be used for business agility, for portfolio management, for architecture, right? I know what I like to be pulled in for. So you can put that in your specialties to make sure you get pulled in for those things. Gaps, you can actually put TBDs in the name column and list the gap that you have on your team that we wished we had. And then that'll help us focus on how do we get those gaps filled. So specialties and gaps. And then booked is, are they actually committed to a mob time? And achieving is, are they actually going to the mob time? And over here, we have some example roles and specializations just to get your brain moving, but doesn't have to be these. On the second tab here, we actually have, if we're going to do, for example, Scrum, you can see here, we do when is PI planning, when is sprint planning going to be? When is our sprint review? When is our sprint retro? You want to do backlog refinement, you can put that in here as well. You want to do risk time. We have that sometimes, story time, we call it. For backlog refinement, we like to call story time. You can drop any of those in here on a cadence, and then you put them in Outlook. But down here in the bottom, whether you're doing Scrum or not, this is important. So what you can see here is Monday through Friday, and you can see from 8:30 to 10, we have a core that, remember I said 90 minutes morning, 90 minutes afternoon. So this is defaulted to our kind of team. The core team meets Monday and Friday. The whole team, including our product managers and product owners, they agree to come every morning on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And notice that we do risk management stuff here for half an hour. In the afternoon, it's core team only. So in other words, by this cadence, we only see our product managers 3 of the 10 total slots. That's traditionally the worst you can do. In other words, you would like them there every time, but if it's less than a third, you're going to get into trouble. You're going to have trouble advancing work. So down to a third is okay. Full, having them be there. If all of these said whole team, that'd be great. And then finally, we also have the stand-up. And notice that the stand-up happens inside of one of these meetings. We don't create separate meetings now. So if you're going to do Scrum, for example, put your stand-up meeting at the beginning, at the end, in the middle, whatever you think works for you. Put your stand-up meeting in your mob sessions. You saw in our agenda, we do it after the first 5 minutes. So 5 minutes in, we begin our stand-up. Why? So we can say good morning and stuff. Finally, once you have your mob times all laid out, like you see down here, these events here, PI, for example, sprint planning, that's going to happen in one of these times, right? Review and retro should happen in one of these times. So as you put these down, you want to put them down inside of the already pre-existing slots for mob time, because guess what? Sprint planning, sprint review, and sprint retro is a form of mob time. So you don't create new boxes for those. The only one that's an exception to this is the sprint review. The sprint review is largely about your stakeholders. We need to find out when they're available. Once you know when they're available, that's sort of locked in. You don't have a lot of choice there. And then you can do the retro right after and planning right after that. So if your stakeholders are available in the morning, you might do your retro and planning for the next sprint in the afternoon. If your stakeholders are available in the afternoon, then you're probably going to do your retro and your planning the next morning. Okay, so locking down your sprint review will help you figure out when everything else goes. So there you have it. The last tab, if you guys look at this on your own here, there's a Mob Time candidate agenda. You already saw that over there, so I'm going to be deleting this soon. There's a working agreement for time boxing and one for multitasking. For a multitask. Now, multitasking is different. A multitask, a task that many people own together. So you can look at those on your own. That, my friends, is Mob Time. And so you're ready for the experiment. Good luck. And hopefully it accelerates you as planned. Let me just bring up, as I close down, the original thing here. So this is what our goals are. That's what you're going to measure for. Thanks very much. My name is Anthony Crane. I hope you found this 15 minutes useful. I'm going to stop the video, I think.